go. All right, everybody. It is my pleasure to have with me today one of the coolest people that I've ever met. We spent time in Costa Rica, got to know each other a little bit. And Kelly, you are an amazing person. I think the time that we spent in Costa Rica, the one thing that impressed me about you was just your openness and your willingness to accept everybody where they are and just throw that love and affection and just that humanity into the mix. I think a lot of times we get caught up in the science of things and the do this and the do that and forget that we're just all people.
Yeah.
And I think you do a very good job of keeping that real and just saying, look, we're all people. We're all no, none of us are perfect. So I just want to thank you for that and let you know that I really appreciate you being on my YouTube channel.
Well, thank you for having me. And what a kind intro. I appreciate that very much. And you just exude joy, acceptance, and knowledge. And I really enjoyed our time together too. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a fantastic. What did you think about Costa Rica? What were your thoughts going in? And then we're going to totally not. We didn't even talk about this. What were your thoughts going into Costa Rica versus coming out of Costa Rica?
I was fairly nervous going into it.
Yeah.
For both of us, it was our first time. I think so, at least. Going to a television set, flying
Mm-hmm.
in. I had met you before, and I had met Bella and Max, but for the most part, I had never met any of those folks before.
Right.
Yeah, I was pretty nervous. I mostly just went into it thinking, I really hope this is not a mistake, and I left thinking, this was so cool. I can't wait to do it
Yes.
again. Yeah, it was really.
Yes. Yeah, I had similar things going into it. The biggest thing for me was just, and we'll talk about this throughout this whole episode, was the how is this going to? We're all influencers. We're all somewhat type A, verbal about what we believe, verbal about how we do things, very assertive,
Yeah.
and we're all going to be in the house, and we all every single person there has a little tweak to the way
Yes.
that they do things, carnivore, fitness, whatever it is. And I was concerned. I'm like, what is this going to be like? It's like going into a room of cats. And, are we all going to be come out scratching and bleeding and whatever else? How are we going to make this work?
Yeah.
And it was like totally the opposite
Right.
of what I expected. Like I was expecting at some point there would be some kind of tension or possible argument or whatever. And there definitely was discussion. And I think it was different from an argument. I think there was discussion about the differences in how we do things, but we were able to come at that professionally, come at that uh, considerately, with consideration
Yes.
for where everyone's coming from and understanding that we're coming together because all of us care about helping and spreading the message of what carnivore can do. And taking that information, we have to understand that we're talking to a broad audience.
Right.
And there's a lot of information, and a lot of people are coming at it from different levels of experience and conditions and whatever. And I think that was just really, it was cool for me to see everybody kind of come together and say, look, yes, we all do things differently, but the message really doesn't change, and the message is still the same.
Yeah. I think it's easy when we are on Instagram and maybe analyzing each other's content and going, oh, no, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And then you meet each other in person, and it's incredibly obvious that, well, everybody there was just really easy to like, personality wise,
Yeah.
easy to like, easy to get along with. But then what I think comes across more easily in person than online is we have way more in common with each other than 99.9% of the rest of the world. Even
Exactly.
like when I think about, say, Dr. Paul Saladino, who in carnivore-ish space, he and I do things very differently at this moment. But
Yep.
if you were to put him and my own medical doctor in the same room together, I would be like, and yeah, Saladino, that's right. Amen. Amen. I mean, compared to most people that we interact with, those little tiny nuances of how much this, how much that suddenly seems so small
Yep.
because we have so much in common.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. When you compare what we're doing in the carnivore space to even if you include just say the ketogenic space, if you
Yeah.
include people that do have some veggies or whatever else in their diet and aren't, all meat, just the ketogenic space in general is so far removed
Yeah,
from where everyone else in society is, that spending any effort in trying to create dissension or focus on the differences is really counterproductive to anybody's progress, because it's really
absolutely.
about bringing us as close to. And I'm so mad that I didn't come up with proper human diet and that Dr. Berry came up with it before I did, because that's really what it is,
Yeah.
right? The closer we get to the proper human diet, the better off everyone's going to be. And some people are further along that path than others, but we're all of us in this space are closer to that end result than anybody else.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's really the cool part about it.
And I have some keto friends online and they're including avocados. And some people might be like, oh gosh, they eat avocados. Hello, look, go to your workplace, your family gatherings. Are they only eating meat and avocados? Are you kidding? They're having Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Avocados in comparison to where most people
Exactly.
are. It's so good. And I can sit around and I can just applaud them for eating meat, nutrient dense foods, and my gosh, you can also handle some avocado. Good for you. That's
Woo.
great.
Yeah. Go for it. Right. I told
Yes.
somebody, I was on a call with some people yesterday, and I said, look, I don't care if you eat veggies or not. I don't like them. I don't eat them. I don't see the use in them,
Yes.
whatever. If you can tolerate them, go for it. But here's the deal. The bottom line, and this is we're way off track of what we were going to talk about, but the
Okay.
bottom line is you should only be eating one ingredient foods.
Yeah.
If your food has more than one ingredient, then it's something you eat. It's not. That's how I
Yeah.
look.
Or
So when you,
one ingredient foods also that serve you well. Like for me, there were some one ingredient foods that did not make my gut feel
100%.
good.
Yep.
So even if it is one ingredient, but it makes you feel like garbage, it's off the table. It's not even carnivore for me. It doesn't
Right.
work.
Right. Yeah.
So
Well, because even carnivore, right? Some people can't do chicken. Some people can't do egg
right.
whites. Some people have an issue with pork. Or
Yeah.
if you eat, even like if you have leftovers, right? The histamine over time, like there's all sorts of different things. Just because it's meat, it doesn't mean that it's always the right thing. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that goes into that. Absolutely.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we can talk about all that stuff again as we go through. But I want to know a little bit about you. I know you are like the OG carnivore lady.
I
You've been
can't
doing
ever
this.
accept that. Here's why I can't take that title. Well, first of all, obviously, ancestrally, there were a lot of actual OGs out there. But
Yes.
even in the last 20 years, when people say that, this is what immediately floods my mind. I came upon this carnivore community that was already out there, and I benefited from those people. And I was a mess for the first 6 months. And I think any of those people that were to watch this and see me go, yeah, carnivore OG, which I never say, would be like, oh, please, girl. Because there were people out there like Joe and Charlene Anderson who have
Right.
several years on me. Charles Washington, he is not publicly active as a carnivore anymore, but he was the leader at that time. He mentored me, and I did struggle in the first 6 months. So while it is really kind and I appreciate that, I had people who helped me as well. I needed
Sure.
mentors
For sure.
and I had some. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I guess by OG, I think for the most part, outside of the Andersons, I mean, I've been doing it for almost 5 years. There's only a few people that when I started, I think you and I didn't hear about the Andersons until a couple of years after.
Yeah.
So
They're
it's
very
crazy how,
quiet.
even though all this information is out there, how we all have our own path and we find
Right.
different people different ways. The first people I found was Esme Lafleur
Yeah.
and Paul Mabry. Those are the first two people that I found back in the day. And then it was you. And then couple years later, I heard about the Andersons. Like, the Andersons, who are these people? Wait, what? What's going on here? But I think when I say OG, I feel like it's more OG, not just from carnivore, but from being vocal,
Okay.
being on YouTube, grow. Like you're of the community of influencers in the space. You
Thank
are
you.
probably one of the OGs.
All right,
How
I'll
about
take
that?
that. All right,
Is
fist
that
bump on
we
that
had
one.
a
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
there we go.
Yeah,
Because
thank
you've
you.
been talking about it. You've been out there, putting yourself out there, taking the brunt of criticism, doing all of this stuff, being kind of the face in a way for many years. So what is that what okay, first off, real quick, why did you go carnivore? And
Yeah.
then second half of that, like what made you want to talk about it and be that face and take all of that? I'm sure you got some flack. You've gotten some flack over the years for being that crazy woman who's on YouTube eating meat. Uh, how does all that work?
Yeah. So as a kid, I wasn't terribly, I wasn't like horribly sick, but I kept getting, my health was getting worse and worse. And by age 25, I had a mouth full of cavities. I weighed
Mm.
over 260 pounds. I was getting boils. It's like every year
Oh,
after I
wow.
hit adulthood, things just kept getting worse. And I thought, I'm falling apart and I'm 25.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And so I went to my doctor. The boils were the type that you have to go and get lanced,
Get them.
drained,
Yeah. Yeah.
packed
Yeah.
full of gauze. And I went to go do that for I don't know how many times in a row. And the doctor was finally like, well, we're just going to keep doing this until you lose 100 pounds. And I was like, okay, cool. But I've tried to lose weight my whole life. I really had. I
Hmm.
just, nothing would work for long. And at that point, he is still alive. I think he's about 90 years old. He's retired.
Wow.
His name is Dr. Benjamin Dunlap. And Dr. Dunlap, which is sort of funny because Dr. Barry now has some joke about Dunlap.
Dunlap,
I
my
done,
belly Dunlap over my belt.
yes. And the first time I heard Dr. Barry make that joke, I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. But that was his name, Dr. Dunlap. And he said that it's the carbs. You're inflamed because of the carbs. It's
He
sugar,
told you that.
carbs.
That's awesome. Okay.
Oh, flat out. In fact, he told me to research the Inuit people. This was 2004.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So in 2004, I had the greatest health talk that anybody could have had at that point.
Yeah.
And he even gave me a little handout to show me what not to eat on one side. And the handout showed cereal. It even had fruit. Do not
Yeah.
eat. Um,
What? That's awesome.
potatoes, pasta, all of the carbs. And I looked at it. That's the side we looked at first. And I was like, my gosh, that's all I eat. Like what's left? I eat cereal all the time back then.
Oh my God.
Fat-free cereal with
Fat
skim
free. Yep.
milk. How am I
Heart
still so
healthy.
how am I still so fat? Right? Like, I'm just eating fat-free everything. And that day, then he turned it over. He said, now here's what you can have. And it was all these meats. It did show leafy greens, but I really wasn't into leafy greens. And
No.
he said, if you want some diet soda, I would I would prefer that you have that over regular soda.
Sure.
No juice,
Sure.
no. And he said, dairy, you can have dairy. Said,
Sure.
oh, and eggs. Said, but how many calories from this side? He goes, oh no, there's not a calorie limit from this side. I'm about this. That's so stupid. Like,
Where did he get this thing from? This little handout. We need to make these and start
yeah,
doing like handing out, go to the mall and start walking out, handing out these little
for
things in
real.
the mall.
It was something I could take home with me that was just like, okay, do not eat anything from this side. Eat as much as you want from that side. I could do that. I could
That
do
is
that.
amazing.
Yeah. And he said, I'll see you in a year. I would like to do a follow-up in a year. And I literally said, not like ha ha, but I said, I mean, I'll probably see you before that. Because I had to
Right.
come in all the time for these boils. Well,
Right.
I did not see him for a whole year. And I have never had one boil since. And that has been 18 years ago now. So for my first
Wow.
5 years that I don't even call carnivore because I didn't feel like this, but for 5 straight years, I ate almost exclusively meat, but I did still include diet soda,
Yep.
sugar-free Jello. As
Yep.
long as it said carbs 0, then I was
Right.
like, okay, we're good.
Yep.
And then some pickles, a little bit of green beans, but mostly carnivore. So that was the first 5 years. My health improved crazy dramatically. Of course, I lost weight, no more boils. I haven't had one single cavity since that talk with him.
Wow.
None. And I was going like every time I went to the dentist, he's like, well, 3 more. When do you want to make the appointment? Oh, gosh. Okay. So I haven't had that since. And then 5 years, by the end of that 5 years, though, I was exhausted because I was having intense sugar cravings, even at that point. And
Okay.
that's when I decided to do some Googling and searching. That's when I found Charles Washington and the Andersons and Dana Spencer Shute, Amber O'Hearn. She was over
Amber, yep.
there. Yeah. So that's when I found some of those folks that said, it's really the artificial sweeteners that are causing these cravings. If you give up those, you'll be good. Oh, and they said also eat more fat.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. And that's about the only missing piece that I didn't get from my doctor was eat more fat and cut out sweet taste. Those two things, I've been set for the next 13 years have been much easier.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And then that's where you say that's where you really kind of locked it in and made a difference. And I think
Yeah.
that's really cool because that's a really good example of the progression that people do.
Mm.
You started out in that outer rim of nutrition, and then you got closer to that proper human diet, and you got better. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't 100% all meat. It wasn't whatever anybody wants to classify or put in a box as carnivore, hypercarnivore, lion diet, whatever. It was closer.
Yeah.
We just want people to get closer because the
Yeah.
closer you get, the better you get. And then you realize, hey, wait, I feel fantastic. And then you're like, well, what if I stop doing this? Or what if I start doing this? Right. And then you can
Right.
make those little changes and you eat a little bit closer to better and better and better.
Yeah. Oh, and you asked why did I start sharing?
Yeah.
So I became super active on this forum. It wasn't a Facebook group. It was called Zeroing In on Health, and it was journals. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
pages and pages of journals. And so there was a Kelly Hogan journal, and I would type every day, and then people would come in and comment and respond. But new people would come in.
That's cool.
And so professionally, at that point, even I was a teacher. That's what my degree is education. I love teaching, and people would come in and ask questions. I was like, oh, I know this one, and I would answer, and that felt so good. And to see them progress and say, oh my gosh, you're right, without the sweeteners my cravings did go away.
Yep.
And I just started answering more and more and responding and finding a lot of joy in that. And then I do not even remember the first interview I ever had where somebody said, do you want to talk about it? Sure. Okay. And back in those days, whenever it was pretty early on.
Mm-hmm.
The world was not what it is now. They were not ready for this.
Yeah.
I mean, not ready for this. There was pretty early on an article in Good Housekeeping and also an article in Women's World.
Okay.
And the third one was Daily Mail. Those three were probably the three most criticized, hated on. The articles were written in a way where it was like, we know this can't be healthy, but guess what this woman in North Carolina is doing? And I was like, God, why'd you have to write it so mean?
Seriously, right?
Yeah. And then the comments, they would post their articles on social media, and I would go in and actually read them, which was a huge mistake. But then every once in a while, somebody would message and say, hey, I read that. That was so me. And I decided to try. And you know, like,
yes,
okay,
yes.
there it is.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah. And also I have kids who are very meat-based. And when I think about them in the future, I don't want them to have to explain this every time. You know, vegans, their kids don't have to explain what is vegan. Oh, why do you do this?
Right.
They just, people know. I want people to just know when they say, oh, I eat a meat-based diet. I want them to understand why, what that's about. And I want to lay that foundation so they don't have to go through all this crap.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right. So you're out there now. You got YouTube, you got Instagram, you got all the social medias. You're doing this kind of stuff. You're going to be on a TV show. Is that sunk in yet? Like, I'm going to be on a TV show. Like,
that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, isn't it? So here's the question. Here's the big question.
Okay.
How do you carnivore?
Yeah, it's changed even since I really officially started 13 years ago. In the very beginning, the first 8 months, I was doing lion diet before lion diet, that term had been even created. I didn't know what I was doing. But that's just how people carnivored back then. In 2009, it was all beef. That's just how we did it. It's not like there was a rule book. That's just what my people were doing. And so I started doing it. The only real difference between lion diet is they say beef, salt, and water. It was beef and water. The end. We didn't even salt back then. There were no seasonings.
You didn't even salt the meat?
Oh, no. We salted nothing.
What?
No,
Wow.
that's how
Okay.
carnivores, that's how we did it back then. No salt at all. There were some who would barely salt, but it was seen back then as almost like a level down. Like I'm still seasoning my meat. Similar to
Wow.
now.
Like I'm not really there yet.
That's right. That's how it was seen back then.
Okay.
And not just how I perceived it. That's how it was talked about.
Right.
Is I'm still salting my meat. And it was like, oh, okay. Well, you'll lose your taste for salt eventually. And a lot of people did stop salting.
That's
I did not
crazy.
use salt. I did not use salt, cheese, seasonings, or anything but plain meat and plain water for my first 8 months of carnivore.
Okay.
Because that's
Wow.
how we did it.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant. And I
Imagine
stayed.
that.
Yeah, and that was part of the whole point of doing higher fat was I really
Yeah.
wanted fertility and a baby.
Mhm.
And at that point, I could not eat plain meat. No, I couldn't even look at it. So I started adding in eggs, cheese, sausage, bacon,
Yeah.
seasoning, salt. Yeah, I was still carnivore, but I felt like,
Sure.
oh my gosh, I am living it up, baby.
And it's a little bit more enjoyable. Like you have some variety, So I'm in the middle, just finished technically because I'm doing coffee now. Thank God, I love my
Oh,
coffee.
welcome back.
But we were doing lion diet for a few weeks, and just the 3 weeks that we did just beef,
Yeah.
salt and water, you feel like, man, there's got to be something else I can eat. Like, this is crazy. And thinking about how everyone talks about carnivores being so restrictive,
Mhm.
when I actually went what I consider to be restrictive, I can eat one meat and I can
Yeah.
drink water. It's like, okay, that's restrictive. Now thinking about the eggs and all the other meats and the ways that I can cook it and the sausage, like you said, and the bacon, and like all these things, I'm like, the options are so broad within the
Yeah.
carnivore space. How anybody can think it's restrictive makes no sense. And then
Agreed.
just putting some slap your mama on my,
Mm,
oh my gosh, that stuff, whoo, that makes everything better.
agreed. Yeah. No, I don't feel restricted at all anymore. And
No,
honestly, my first several months of carnivore, I was just so excited to not be alone anymore, to have people that were eating that way.
yep,
I felt happy to be eating more fat because I hadn't been eating enough fat. I just felt good.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So, all right, I did that for the first several months. Then I was just pregnant and having babies and breastfeeding for literally 5 years straight. I just had them pretty back to back. And
Okay.
and then as I was raising kids for
Wait,
about,
you did carnivore while you were pregnant and breastfeeding? That's
yes,
horrible for your kids. What are you talking about?
that's why they're so dumb and ugly now. Yeah, huge mistake, man. Don't eat real food.
Oh my gosh.
No, they're really great kids.
Yeah.
And yeah, adorable. They're good. Um, but at some point I fell into the routine of fast food burger patties. I was working full time. I had little babies, toddlers. I was
Yep.
nursing. It was hard. I was really busy during those days, and I was spending a great deal of time of my free time on zeroing in on health, which at that point was now a Facebook page. I was
Right.
moderating, answering questions. None of it was for any pay at all. It's just I loved it. So every day I ate 6 to 8 burger patties almost every single day for 10 years. 6 to 8
Wow.
burger patties. I
I mean,
would
it's so much easier, right? I mean, it's just meat.
so
So,
easy.
yeah.
I didn't need my food to be interesting. My whole life was too interesting. I was very busy, and
if
it
if
was
I if I could afford it, I would literally eat Five Guys every single day.
very so
Like if I
so
could afford it, if it
good.
wasn't so expensive, I
Yeah,
would every single freaking day.
right. And I could afford McDonald's at that point.
Yeah.
We don't have Five Guys here, but I had McDonald's. I know I've had it just one time my whole life. It was very
What?
good.
Okay,
Yeah.
franchise opportunity. Five Guys. Go to where Kelly lives, please.
Yes, please. And so McDonald's at that point was $1 per patty. So that meant
Mhm.
I ate all day long for $6 to $8 per day. It was easy. You hear about really busy people. I think it was Steve Jobs. Isn't he the guy who every day put on a black shirt because it
Yep.
was one less thing to think about? This
Yep.
was my version of putting on a black shirt every day. I didn't have to think about it. And I
Yep.
loved it. All right. So then I got involved with Instagram, and 6 to 8 burger patties does not look that great on Instagram every day. That's not interesting at all. So I did start adding more variety, some fish, some egg yolk, some this, some that. And I thought, man, this is actually pretty delicious. Also, my
Mhm.
kids were getting older, so I had more time to do all that.
And then they also can enjoy this other stuff, and we get
Oh,
them involved in it
yeah.
and everything else. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure,
So
for sure.
now I do have more variety.
Okay.
I do currently still drink coffee and I do use seasonings. I didn't bring my coffee mug down here because I thought you were still off of coffee.
No, well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
No, it was like 2 days ago.
Okay.
Nat was like, "Hey, I think I'm ready to throw something else in and see what if I introduce something." I was like, "Does that mean I can have coffee today?" And she was like, "Yeah, go have coffee." I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's been a couple days. Okay, so you're doing seasonings, you're salting,
Oh, yeah.
do you do electrolytes? Do you just do salt? Like, what are you doing on that front? Because I know that's still a debate, right,
Sure.
out there. You don't need to, and there's still people that are concerned about it. I recommend most people do supplement with electrolytes. What are your thoughts?
I did not use electrolytes ever, not at all, except 2 packets for my first 13 years of carnivore.
Okay.
A friend of mine had gone keto and she's like, Kelly, girl, how are you doing this without electrolytes? I said, I've never even tried electrolytes,
Yeah,
except for what is naturally in our food. I did never add
sure.
electrolytes. I did try to get her to understand meat does have sodium. I am getting some potassium, magnesium. I'm
Yeah.
getting them. It's just not in a packet. She's like, try it. So I tried it for 2 nights in a row and I got leg cramps. I got leg cramps and I
Yes.
had not been having them. So I
Yes.
think what I try to tell people is if you're feeling really great, you may not need them. If you're not feeling really great, yes, absolutely. Try some electrolytes. It might
Sure.
make you feel better. Well, now I am working out. I did not work out until not very consistently in a hard, sweaty kind of way
Mhm.
until I think September,
Okay.
October. That's when
Okay.
I joined CrossFit. I know we're going to talk about
Woohoo!
that. And at that point, I thought, okay, on my workout days, I am sweating. And I did start to get a few minor leg cramps in the night. So I thought I'm going to try adding some electrolytes. And there's a product called 40,000 volts. It's just a liquid that tastes like salt water.
Yeah.
And I put it in my bottle of water and I don't know that it's helpful, but it doesn't seem to be hurting anything. So there you go.
Right. Okay. Cool. How are your cramps? You deal
No,
with those at
I'm
all?
sleeping great.
Yeah. So okay.
I
I mean,
do.
it's doing something. Great.
I
So
think so.
okay. So and that's a great example again. You got to try it. Things are going to change. And this is, I think, one of the biggest things people need to understand is again, you're a great example of this. What worked for you 5 years ago, a year
Mhm.
ago, isn't going to work for you all the time and forever.
Yeah.
What got you here isn't going to get you there. And there's going to be some things that change, whether it be your lifestyle changes, whether it be your activity level changes, your health improves. And this is, here's one thing that we don't talk about enough, I think, is the more healthy you get, the more freedom you have in the choices that you can make. You're not as limited, right? So you can now start playing around with things and having some fun, figuring out how things are working and if you like it or don't like it, or how it adds to the the enjoyment or the benefit of what you're doing. So getting healthy is great from a quality of life perspective, but it also opens more doors in the things that you can play around with and try for yourself.
Yeah. Once people get to that baseline of I feel good,
Yeah,
then you got two options: hold or say, okay, now I know what good feels like. Now I
exactly.
can try that coffee again. Now
Yeah,
maybe I can see how do eggs or dairy affect me. But if you don't even know what good feels like, you haven't even made it there yet.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're not ready.
I equate it to finances. It's
Mm.
a lot of people are starting in debt with their health.
Yep.
And the struggle that people have is they're trying to improve their health. They're trying to get out of debt. And at the same time, they're not understanding that they're in debt. So they're still spending money. They're still doing things and they're just getting themselves further in debt. If you actually, we talk about restriction. If you create yourself a budget and don't spend over that budget, you can get yourself out of debt. And that's a lot like what this is. If you are deliberate and intentional about the way that you eat and how you put your nutrition plan together and follow it, get yourself out of debt, then you can start getting yourself in the black and getting some money that you can go spend and you can go play around with and do the things that you want to do because you're not trying to climb out of this health hole.
Yeah, and people say maybe people who are trying to climb out of the financial will say, "Gosh, I can't live like this forever." Like, no, that's the idea. you're not going to have to live like this forever.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
same for people who say, I have to cut out everything right now. Oh, yeah, for right now, that's probably true, but maybe
Yeah.
not forever.
Right. Because it's what's best for you. I mean, you can enjoy things and you enjoy things now and not enjoy things later, or you
Yeah.
can and here's the thing, just because you're living within a budget doesn't mean you can't create that budget in such a way that it's not enjoyable.
Oh,
Right?
sure.
Like you
Right.
can, there's things that you can do on the path towards improving your health and still have enjoyment in your life. It's not like, it's a lot about your mindset, what you're focusing on. And this is one of the big things that we can talk about when we talk about where fitness comes into play is adding fitness and doing something that's helping you get better physically and improve your physical ability, improve your strength, how you feel every day is a
Yeah.
great way to change that mindset of I'm restricting, I'm just trying to lose weight to I'm actually trying to improve and grow. And it's that difference between a fixed mindset and abundance mindset, growth mindset of saying, look, I'm not worried. I'm not focusing on the negative aspects of what I'm losing. I'm focusing on the positive aspects of what I'm doing. And that
Yeah. I
process.
like that. And
Yeah.
I like focusing too on my input into it, my consistently putting in the work, my
Mm-hmm.
consistently doing the things instead of people where it's like, okay, I'm kind of doing it, but all I'm focusing on is the scale, the scale, the scale, like the
Right.
output. The
Yeah.
output, you can't control that. So focus on controlling what you literally have total control of, which is your input.
100%. I love that too. That's great. All right. So here's the question that this whole thing is going to be about. Everyone's waiting for this conversation.
Okay, let's
Right.
do it.
What is the difference between high fat and high protein? Right. So if we were looking at this as two warring factions, right? Because I
Okay.
think a lot of people look at you as the high fat representative or a high fat representative, and I'm the high protein representative. And we actually had a good conversation about this when we were in Costa Rica. Um, and I think wording, identity, boxes that people put things in, there's a lot of stuff that kind of goes into this conversation. And an example of the wording, I've never said anyone should be high protein, but that's how people view me because
Yeah.
I talk about prioritizing protein.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also never said anyone should be low fat, but
Right.
that's how people view me because the concept of prioritizing protein. Well, if you're prioritizing protein, that means everything else has to be low, and that's that's a misconception. That is a false perception of the message that I send. And does that same kind of thing happen with you? Because I feel like when you say high fat, you're talking about, and tell me if I'm wrong. When I hear you talk about high fat, it sounds to me more like you're focusing on fat more than you did in the past.
Yes.
I'm not saying I live my life around fat. Everything is all fat all day long. I think there's a different perception there as well.
Yeah. Like I said, for a decade, I just ate burger patties. I'm not
Yeah.
anti-protein. And that honestly, I could do that right now. My body, I'm metabolically well.
Yeah.
My fasting insulin stays below 2. I'm not sick anymore. I could probably eat any version of carnivore I want to and feel amazing because
Yeah.
I'm more flexible.
Right.
The whole reason I started looking into something other than eating piles of burger patties per day is it just wasn't working for some clients. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't. They were doing it and not for like, yeah, but you got to give it time to heal. Okay, well, it's been 2 years. Like they aren't thriving like I was thriving.
Yeah.
And you're a coach, I'm a coach. I can't be okay with that. I can't just keep saying, but it worked for me. All
Right.
right. It did. And it just wasn't happening for some of these folks. So I started looking into why they're not eating carbs, and some other folks were saying because they're lying, they're not real. I was like, no, they're not.
I've heard that too. It's like, guys, just because it's not happening doesn't mean the person's lying to you. Like
Yeah.
everyone's got a different situation. Yeah,
I
100%.
mean, I'm assuming there have been folks in the past that have not been completely truthful
Sure.
about carb intake.
Sure.
That is, I know some of these people. They're dear friends. They are desperate. They're giving it their all. They're just eating meat. and something wasn't working.
Yeah.
And so I took a course through a Dr. Annette Bosworth, Dr.
Oh,
Boz.
yeah. Dr.
And
Boz.
she
Yep.
talked a lot about how there were folks that just couldn't, she found as an internal medical doctor that there were folks who could not handle large amounts of protein as well as other people.
Sure.
And I was like, protein? But I'm a carnivore. That felt offensive to me. We love protein.
Yep.
But then I did meet some carnivores who had tried reducing protein per sitting. That is a very important part of this. Per sitting, and found that if they spread the protein out, that they actually were getting better results. And if they added fat with each meal. So here's something we talk about the wording. When I send out meal options to my group members, and it's not a meal plan, it's just a whole list of meals. And at the top, it says each meal has 25 to 30 grams of protein and at least 80% of calories from fat. Mm-hmm. All of them 25 to 30. And this is my version of, this is high fat carnivore. Well, then one of the biggest advocates for high protein is Dr. Gabrielle Lyons, right?
Yep.
I saw her post the other day, said, here are some ideas of how to get 30 grams of protein per meal. And I was like, oh my gosh.
It's not that off. It's not that different, right? It's the same thing.
We're all just trying to make sure we get our 30. And there's a reason to hit that 30 grams of protein based on current, at least right now, research. Yep. You want to get that at least once per day, particularly around a workout, because you want to get the amount of leucine that you need. You want to be able to spark that mTOR. You want to grow some muscle. Great. But it does not necessarily mean that somebody whose ideal body weight is 150 pounds or 130 pounds, they may not need 130 pounds of protein if they are still so metabolically unwell that their body can't process it. I'm dealing with women who on a standard carnivore diet wake up with their glucose over 200. I'm not talking 100. Yep. That could be like, oh, okay, that's 105.
Yeah.
I had that on a standard carnivore diet. I did not panic. That's fine. 200? Like
that's a bit much. That's a bit much. That's a little bit
much.
Yeah.
So, and we say, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it.
And OMAD, and you got to OMAD. You got to intermittent fast. You can't.
Absolutely. You've got to get that entire 135 grams of protein in one sitting. And meanwhile, their glucose they're still diabetic as a carnivore. I've got a problem with that. And their doctors do. So then I said, what if you were to get still the same approximate amount of protein, but we just spread it out throughout the day, 3 or maybe even 4 mini meals. If you had 4 meals of 25 grams of fat, you're still going to get 100 grams of protein. And maybe that's where you need to start, with the idea of then you can work yourself back up protein wise once you have some other health aspects under control.
Yes.
So I am not low protein.
Yeah. And that's a perfect explanation. And this is what I try to tell people too. I said, in some cases, I spent a lot of time. I was so fortunate last year at KetoCon, before the event started, I was able to get like an hour of just sitting, talking to Dr. Boz, getting more information about what her philosophy is, how she approaches stuff. And it was super helpful and insightful to understand that the process of metabolic repair is an important part of the whole person's journey. So there are some people I have, and this is that going back to that, what's worked for you before may not work for you now. Most of the people that I deal with are in the other spectrum of what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people I work with have been through that, where they've been high fat, they've been doing this, they've gotten to a point where now they are better metabolically, and they're trying to figure out, okay, I've gotten to this point, but I'm stuck. I don't know where to go now.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, well, now you're better. Yes. Your body's working better. You have better efficient function. So let's switch things up a little bit and play around with what is adequate for you getting to the next level. And that's where that conversation is different. But they are both absolutely part of the puzzle that someone may have to evaluate. There is not a right or a wrong. It is not one or the other. It is, here's the key. And I wanted to see if we can agree to this, and maybe we can start a trend.
Okay.
We can start saying adequate instead of a quantitative term. So instead of saying I'm high fat or I'm high protein or I'm low fat or I'm low protein, what if we all just started saying I get adequate fat and adequate protein from my goals?
Yeah, I'm good. I typically say high fat, adequate protein right now, whereas before I think I would have said high protein, adequate fat. just
Yeah.
sort of flip them, but never would either one of us. I know we would never agree to. If you're a carnivore and you're not eating carbs, you should not be low protein or low fat. And
Exactly.
honestly, if you're eating only meat all day, it's going to be real hard for the general public to consider you low on either of those things ever.
Yes, exactly. Like it's both. Like if we're compared to what other people are eating, it's high fat and high protein.
Absolutely, because you got
So
nothing else. There's
the
only three
distinction
options.
is kind of, and this is something you pointed out in Costa Rica. We were looking at the table. We're all eating lunch at one time,
Yeah.
and you're looking at the table. And like, look, guys, look at what we're all eating. You got Bella over here, who's steak and butter gal, who eats 18 million sticks of butter every day, and and houses some steak. I have never seen anybody destroy so much meat at a sitting. She
Absolutely.
eat, right?
Yes.
And then you look at my plate and they look the same.
Yes. We're all just eating meat.
We're all
She
just
adds
eating
more
meat.
butter. She may add more
What is
butter
there
than
to
you
fight
do.
over?
I know.
Yeah,
I know. And
crazy.
people who have said, people who do low protein diets like Bella, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't know Bella at all.
No.
That girl eats more meat than anyone I know. If you watch anything she posts on Instagram, like that
Yes.
is legitimately how that girl eats.
Yeah, and if you guys are curious, like I eat a lot. I eat about 2 pounds and half a dozen to a dozen eggs a day in the normal. Per meal, she was out eating me.
Yes.
Per meal. Like I'd get three, two or three of the little steaks, ribeyes, whatever we had, a bunch of those deviled eggs that Maria was making. Oh
Oh,
my gosh. I'd eat a bunch of those and she would eat more than me at a meal. It's like,
yeah.
goodness. And she's like half my size.
Yeah, she's
So she can eat. She can eat.
yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's the biggest part of the conversation. I think getting people to understand that again, we're trying to get closer to what's best for each person.
Mm-hmm.
And the more effort we spend focusing on the differences, the less time we spend focusing on what works.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, just lost my train of thought. I was really about to say something good, Bronson.
I hate when that happens.
I know. No, oh, I know. My real answer on how much fat and how much protein, I don't think a person can genuinely know until they try it. And I do have try something. And I think
Yes.
until you're sort of keeping a log and being very, very conscious about how you feel and what you are doing. Sometimes I think
100%.
we're going through like, I don't know what I'm exactly eating or how I'm feeling or how I'm sleeping. It's like, okay, well, it's going to be hard to help you. What are you
Yeah.
doing right now? And how is that going? If people can answer those two questions, what are you doing and how's it going? Now we can experiment in the name of like, let's try something.
Yep.
If you've been eating sticks and sticks of butter for months and by George, that's not working and you hate it, we should probably do something different. And also, one thing I have found now after several months of working with people trying higher fat, they don't tend to stay there. And that's similar to what you were saying. I think for a lot of women, when it comes to hormonal healing and feeling like, oh, finally a sense of satisfaction,
Yeah.
doing high fat for a while is really helping some folks. I do not think people tend to stay there. I don't see them staying there.
Yeah.
I see them starting to feel almost at first like they can't get enough butter.
Sure.
Their body needs it.
Yeah. I
I
can
mean,
see that.
they just need that fat. And ask them in 3 months, are you still craving sticks of butter? Most of the time they're like, I got a little bit burnt out on it. Like, that's right. Because your body has had enough. You're healing, you're feeling better. And now you're craving more protein. Cut back on it. Follow that. Your body knows.
Yeah, and that goes to the core of what we're talking about again is it's not about fat loss, it's about metabolic healing and metabolic function. We're trying to fix how our body's working. So, this is a conversation that I have frequently with clients is I don't care if you lose weight, I don't care if you lose fat, or even if you gain muscle right off the bat. If there's an issue that we're trying to fix from a health perspective, all of those things are great. Yeah, we want to gain muscle, we want to lose fat and whatever else. But if there's something else that's holding you back or that's really bothering you or affecting your life, and we can fix that by increasing your fat, in a lot of cases, it's just overall food in general. People are under eating protein and fat. If it just means eat more food in general, and I'm not going to track it, I'm not going to do anything, I just want you to stuff your face every single day, then that's what the plan's going to be. And we're not focused on body composition. We're not even focused on physical performance at that point. We're focused on just getting you to a baseline where you can then take the next step.
Right. Yeah, I like that. My good friend Danny, Danny Conway, she says weight loss is a byproduct of a healthy body and balanced hormones.
Yes.
And so I think sometimes we take very unhealthy bodies who aren't fueled, they aren't well fed, and we're just trying, eat less, and you're gonna lose weight. And it's like, no, you gotta get well first.
Yeah, absolutely. I see it a lot in women who, and this is one of the things that really does bug me on the nutrition space. I just saw you liked my
Yes, I
story
did.
this morning.
Yeah.
It drives me up a wall when people are out there telling women that they need carbs in order to fix all these problems with keto and carnivore. Yeah. And when really, I've met very few women who have a problem with keto carnivore that isn't related to under eating, poor stress management, not getting enough sleep, overworking, overtraining, exercising too much, and all of these other things. And it's not necessarily, and then also trying intermittent fasting and OMAD and trying to eat all these giant portions of things. And there's just so many other aspects to this whole big picture that if it doesn't work when they try it, all of a sudden, well, keto's not for me. I need carbs. Yeah. It's like, no, that is such the easy way out. There's so many other things that we can look at to make this whole thing work better.
So clearly there are plenty of us out here who have been living without carbs for a long time. We know it is possible. That mark that off us. Is it possible to be a thriving woman or man without carbs? Yes. Do some people say they feel better with some whole food carbs added back in? Yes, I have some friends who enjoy carbs and say that they feel some better when they add them. But you're right, we don't know why. And I don't even, honestly, if they're feeling good and they're happy, that's great. Yeah. I do think sometimes there may be something underlying, but if they feel like they feel better with their avocado added and they want to do that, I've got no problem with it. But when somebody tells me you have to have carbs, I'm like, no, I don't. I don't know about you. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So let's finish. We're getting close to an hour here. Let's finish up and ask you the big question that is close to my heart.
Okay.
And that is, what is your take on fitness now versus what it was 5 or 10 years ago? And tell us about CrossFit.
Okay. For the first 13-ish years, my 13-year carniversary was in October, so maybe a little before that.
Yep.
I did not have much of a fitness routine. I would do things like try to take a walk. I would take a walk. I like walks. Mm-hmm. And I would have phases where I would do 20 push-ups per day on my knees. Okay. And I would check that off. So I've had little checklisty things through the years that would come or go, but no real program or strength training. Did not join a gym or anything. Okay. And I'll tell you why. A couple of reasons. First of all, the whole point of me doing this was to get healthy, stop having boils, get fertility back, and lose weight. That was my main. And honestly, I was able to do every single bit of that list without working out.
Exactly.
That was my list. In fact, part of getting back fertility was like, I'm going to need you to de-stress, relax, calm down. I was, during my first 5 years of almost carnivore, I was doing a lot of cardio, elliptical.
That's a common thing that a lot of women do that messes them.
Yeah, and my period had stopped, and so the carnivore gurus, Charles Washington, one of the actual OGs, was like, I'm going to need you to get off that elliptical. He was really blunt. He's like, your body thinks you're being chased by a bear every day.
Every day.
Yeah. Like you need to.
I'm totally stealing that. That is fantastic.
And I was doing it morning and night. He said, literally, your body thinks you are waking up and being chased by an animal every morning and every night because internally that feels the same. You hate these workouts. You're stressed. He said, you're wanting a baby and your body is saying, I don't know what's chasing you, but you can't have a baby right now. Yep. So I got off the elliptical and I didn't get back on anything for 13 years because it met my goals. Well, then, you take some before and after pictures every once in a while and you're like, okay, still at a good weight. Was happy with it. But I wanted something a little different. I wanted some definition. I wanted some muscle. I
Yeah, yeah.
also found that there were some things around the house. Now you start seeing these like longevity tests. If you can sit cross-legged and stand up without touching, if you can do this, if you can do that. And my kids were able to do them. And my husband, who is not even carnivore, was able to do some better than I was. I was like, oh,
Wow.
that's not good.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
all right. So I thought I've met all of these goals. It's time to make more goals. I want to get
Yes.
strong. Oh, and the
Grow.
other reason I put it off was it was almost a badge of honor to say for the carnivore diet, here it is. I did all of this without working out.
I
And I'm
see
just
that
being,
every single day. Absolutely. Yep.
I'm being very honest. That is part of why I didn't do it, was because it was almost like betraying the carnivore diet to do something else. And I had to kind of work through that. It only took me 13 years. So so now at this point, my thinking is I'm not betraying anything. I'm still following the diet that feels best for me, but I also would like to at least stay as strong as I'm now, if not get stronger. And
Yeah,
then
you're adding to it. You're
I'm
adding to it. And you're actually, what you're doing is you're using the nutrition that you have to make your body function better in the physical activity that you're doing. So now you're just bringing things together and you're making the whole picture of your life even better than it was.
yeah, even just saying add it to it though. You see where that mentality comes from, like this wasn't enough, so I must add to it. That's where that mentality comes from. And I'm trying to get my group members. I still have some of them say, no, I'm gonna do it only with diet. I'm
Sure.
like, I get that. I do. I've lived that a long
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And if that's working for the goals you have in this moment, that's great.
Yep.
But there is zero doubt, no doubt at all, that you're going to have better results, live longer, have less likelihood of dementia, breaking bones if you do this also.
Bingo.
Work out. So another reason I joined CrossFit was I moved to a new town and I didn't have any friends here, and I felt
No.
maybe I could meet some people. So I walked in, and the first day I wasn't really sure, and then I came back the second time and I was hooked when I opened the door and they said, Kelly. I was like, okay, I'm in. That's great. It feels good. And I go, and these people, we fist bump, we work it out, we sweat together, we feel like, why did I come today? I want to die right now. And then it's over and we're so happy and we go out the door smiling, and I'm hooked.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And now what's changed about the way that you look at where you're trying to go? Since it's not just focused on nutrition now, what are you looking at physically? Like, do you have goals now that are based on your physical ability?
Yes, I would like to do really proper push-ups. I'm working on that. So, and I saw you the other day discussing the elbows out. I've long been an elbows out push-upper on my knees, and now I am doing my push-ups with my elbows going back, my head coming more forward,
Awesome.
up on my toes.
Yeah.
I'm getting better. That whole thing about sitting cross-legged, I just posted like crisscross applesauce, and you just stand up without touching anything.
Okay. Yeah.
I posted myself doing that. I can do it now repeatedly, up, down, up, down, up, down, without touching. It's easy.
Awesome.
I think I might be better than my kids now. And not at everything, but just at that. And I would really love to do full-blown unassisted, no band, at least one pull-up. I'm not there yet. I'm still using a band.
You can do it. Just keep practicing. It's just time.
With the band, I'm using like less strong bands.
Yeah.
So I know I'm getting better, but I thought, you spend a really long time with the idea of just getting smaller.
Right.
And then at some point, like, okay, good job.
Yeah.
Let's do something else. Do you have a new trick? Could you actually get a little bigger in good ways, or at least just stronger, or a little, I don't know, just a little more defined?
I did a talk in Salt Lake last year that was titled "A Small Shirt Doesn't Equal a Big Life."
Oh, I like that.
And that is what you're talking about. We spend so much time trying to get small that we don't realize we're also, unless we're doing something fitness wise, we're also shrinking our ability to live life and do things and have adventure and experience things and every day. So I think that's fantastic. I like that. Yeah, big. We want to have big lives, and in order for that, we have to be healthy and we have to be physically capable. I think those are the two things that really do.
Yeah, one of my big reasons also for continuing carnivore, dementia and Alzheimer's runs very, very strongly in all of the
Mm.
women in my family, both sides. They live
Yeah.
so long, but it's the last 10 years, they have no idea what's even happening.
It's so sad. Yeah.
Oh, it's awful to watch. And I know that, well, at least currently they're saying that dementia and Alzheimer's very closely tied to glucose, blood sugar, type 3
100%.
diabetes, they call it. So I
Yep.
think diet wise, I'm doing everything right when
Yep.
it comes to avoiding those things. But again, there's nobody could look at the vast amount of research and say that working out doesn't matter. It matters. Statistically, it matters. And I am more likely to keep my mind if I keep moving.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. It keeps everything going. Oh, thanks a lot, Kelly, for being on. I wish we could talk forever, but you've got some stuff to go do. I've got another call I actually have to get on in a minute. But where can people find you? How do people get more exposure to you? And most importantly, when is the next news episode that you're going to do?
I have not made a carnivore news episode in a while. Uh so I don't know. I don't know. But
Those are the
I
best.
thank you. I appreciate that. I had a lot of fun making those. So I'm my zero carb life. My zero carb life on YouTube, on Instagram. It's
Mhm.
Kelly underscore Hogan 91. And on there, there's a link tree to, I do group coaching each month. I have 8 sessions that meet. They're small groups. That's how I love it. I always taught a classroom of around 30 people. And that's what I like to keep my classroom, my carnivore classroom to now. And where else? I think that's about it. Yeah, I used to do TikTok, but I'm not on there anymore. Mostly YouTube, Instagram, and coaching.
Okay, awesome, fantastic. Thank you very much for being on, and we will definitely have to do this again
I would love
sooner
that.
rather than later.
Yeah, and I hear that we are hopefully going to see each other in person again soon, right?
Yes, actually, I think we're whenever that they're doing the retreat thing now for
Yeah.
people, right? That's gonna be so much fun.
Okay. I'll see you
Take it
then.
easy. Thanks.
Bye.